President Trump, in his flurry of executive orders, rescinded an order signed by Joe Biden that aimed to develop programs to lower prescription drug prices in the United States, where residents pay obviously many, in some cases, many hundreds of times more for prescription medication than people do just over the border in Canada, let alone in Europe and other countries. And so this is Executive Order 14087. That's what they're scrapping. This set up pilot programs by the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Innovation to offer generic medications for a $2 copay to Medicare Part D recipients, and it cut a couple of other things too. So they were gonna try to improve access to high-cost therapies for like cell and gene therapy, accelerating clinical evidence models to try to develop new drugs that could be had for low prices, and they killed this. Now, if you're a voter for Trump, and you will ever hear about this, and 99.9% of you won't, because Fox obviously is not going to mention this, they're the distraction that stops you from knowing the substantive things that Donald Trump is doing. You should know that Reuters reported just last week that Big Pharma's lobbyists were pushing for an end to all of these price negotiation provisions and cost-cutting measures and requirements that drugs be offered for lowered prices. And so the desires and the incentives are super clear here. Working people want cheap drugs. Trump voters said, we want prices down. Now, on the other hand, Big Pharma wants big profits, and Trump went with them. That's what this is about. He does not want the government to work towards, let alone mandate, affordable prescription medication. And so that's what he did. He gave a big old middle finger to desperate Americans, because that is what he will always do when the machine demands a return on their investment in him. Donald Trump might be worth 2 billion, it might be worth 30 billion as a result of his crypto thing or whatever. He is still owned by the machine that controls America, and this is the return. Okay, they said they want cheaper prices. He is literally killing the Biden thing that lowered prices for these drugs. Tens of millions of Americans potentially will pay more for medications now because of Donald Trump's tireless efforts to improve profits for Big Pharma. But he will maybe try to prosecute Fauci, or at least he said he would. So, balance those things. Maybe he's a critic of Big Pharma, even though he delivers money for them.
What
do you think, Brett? I think it's amazing. He didn't have to kill it. There's no reason to, other than to deliver for them.
Yeah, that's all it was. Or he wants credit for whatever he tries to put in its place, which is probably going to be worse. But probably
why not do that?
Happen. So it's a lot of that. Like, orders. It's a lot of here. Can you give me your money and I'll give you something shiny that's worth way less than your money? It's the switcheroo, and that's what Trump does. I'm going to promise you a certain number of things. I'm going to give you the useless fool's gold version of that and keep all the gold for myself and give it to the rich people. Look no further than the panel of billionaires behind him on Inauguration Day, which Sam looked up, and it's like $3 trillion worth of wealth on the stage with him. Like, that's what it is. And when training the producers, I always say, the best thing to do is get used to what something feels like. So this feels like a story that is about this kind of thing. This feels like we need to put B-roll on. Get familiar with a feeling, and it'll happen again when you're in a certain scenario and you can do things, you'll know how to react. And for Trump supporters, this is the feeling right here. This is the feeling I want them to get familiar with, because it's gonna happen a lot. You're gonna be in these scenarios where he says stuff like, I'm gonna lower prices, and then he says there's a tariff, and you run into someone who tells you that tariffs only ever raise prices, and you're gonna get that feeling. You're gonna get that feeling is like, oh, I guess if we do raise prices on stuff, it's gonna raise the price of stuff. That's counter to what Trump promised me. Yeah, that feeling is him fooling you. With this, it's like Trump says he's gonna bring down the prices of prescription drugs, and he undoes something that takes down the price of prescription drugs. That's that feeling again. Wait, this does make it, get used to it, because that's what he does. That's his whole thing. And how do I know? Because we did it before. We already did a whole Trump administration where he promised a lot. He delivered like this stuff that's not gonna affect you. Some of it you really wanted, like getting rid of Roe versus Wade. That's not gonna really affect your life. It's gonna affect other people's lives. And meanwhile, all he did was deliver tax cuts for the rich. And you're like, you're right, I did look at my refund. I don't have one this year. Yeah. Because he raised taxes on me and cut them on the rich. That's that feeling. You're gonna get used to it, and it's gonna make you feel miserable.
Yeah, and you might not be able to take the medication anymore. Maybe
if you run out of the ambrosia that he's trying to feed you or whatever.
But on the other hand, the maybe couple dozen trans athletes in the country won't be able to play the sports they want. So you won't be able to take the medication you need. But thankfully, there's like 10 to 17 people that you've never met that are gonna be less happy than they were. So, balance those things out. I know a lot of people are like, well, why don't you talk about this executive order and this executive order? And I would really like to, because there's a lot of them. He withdrew from the World Health Organization. He did a hiring freeze, specifically singling out the IRS because the rich don't want the IRS to have enough people to do their job. So that's what he's focusing on. He pulled us out of the Paris Climate Accords. He started up offshore drilling. He kneecapped American automakers' ability to compete with Chinese EVs. And the issue is that we know that he's planning to flood us with crap, but that's what he's doing. There's a lot of crap. All of it's bad. We're gonna try to focus on as much as we can, but we can only focus on so much. So a lot of bad stuff out there. When you click the join button and become a tier 2 member, you get access to all of our weekly top 10 lists. What are you waiting for?